welcome. It's Allison Schaefer. As promised, we're having another of my Facebook Live series. We're starting at 8 o'clock, and I think we're just like 60 seconds in advance of that. But for you punctual people who set the alarm on the stove so that you wouldn't miss it, I want to make sure that we were up and alive and you arrived at the right place, and I will hold off until 8 o'clock for the official beginning. But just know that I'm doing these talks periodically now because I'm loving this new platform that we can just like hit a go switch and enter into a conversation, and suddenly we can have a dialogue without needing to get out of our house and go to a whole full parenting talk. And better yet, it really allows you to ask your questions. So the way that works on Facebook Live, if you're new to this, is that you type your questions down in the comment field, and the questions can be directly to me, but it can also just be a comment to another parent and a dialogue that you want to just put up your own opinion about what I'm saying while I'm chatting. And I will try to get to as many questions as I can. I've got some prepared content, but you know, for me, the content is always about getting to you folks and hearing about what's going on for you and what information is going to be relevant and useful for the application of what's happening in your family life. So this is like parenting New Year's when kids go back to school, you know? So if you've got kids that have gone off to high school, you've got kids going off to university, they're hitting that other level of maturation. So I want to talk about that, how to parent and transition with our kids that are having burgeoning independence, and how we help them make good decisions when they aren't necessarily under our roof. But also to open the floor to any questions. I actually have a counseling practice, and it's in a nursery school, and today was the first day of drop off, and there was a lot of toddlers who it was their first time being away from their mom and meeting new friends. And there were a lot of tears, and that includes the parents. So anyways, back to school is stressful for everybody. It's the beginning of the new academic year, and it's really where we have to kind of get our game on in our parenting. People are very motivated we're going to do it right this year, or we're going to tidy up last year's mistakes, or whatever it is. So clean slate, new start. Hey, I'm just happy to see you, Maureen. You had a lot of kids to get off to school. So just to give you a little background about me, you might as well kick this off and get going. So I'm Allison Schaefer, but my professional training is that I am a family therapist, and I specialize in parenting, and I'm the third generation in my family to help parents with Adlerian parenting. And a lot of people don't know the name Adler, but really it's Alfred Adler was probably the first person that really talked about what we would describe today in our modern parlance as being democratic parenting, that backbone parenting, as Barbara Coloroso might call it. So it's not child-focused and it's not autocratic. It's a non-punitive, non-reward based approach, mutual respect, but that still honors that the parent has a very specific role to guide the family and to be the leader in the family. And that's something that's kind of new and creates confusion for a lot of people. So what does it look like? How does that play out? So that's my background. And this is now one of multiple talks that I've had in my Family Talk series. And I also have a whole series of videos on my YouTube channel if you want to go back and look at old archived information about how to talk to our kids and how to maintain our influence as our kids get older. And especially in these years where what we know, statistically speaking, is that when our kids get closer to the age of the legal drinking age, there is an increase with each approaching year and month that they reach the age of being a legal drinker. There's an increased chance that they're going to want to drink because it's getting closer and closer. So it's not only that they're kind of getting close to adulthood and they want to experiment with it, but the truth is there's just a whole lot more opportunity. So if they're going off to college, it's all around, you're not there, they may be celebrating freedom, they may want to look cool, get in with the right kind of people. So that has a whole new set of challenges. And if you've got kids that are in high school, many of them have older siblings, and the older siblings have access to bringing liquor in, and the partying kind of goes that way. And we know that peers and peer pressure and fitting in is really super important in those age groups. So how do we help our kids navigate all of that in a way that has the highest likelihood of them being able to say no to alcohol? And what we've seen from research is that the number one indicator really, or the most successful approach in terms of the strategies that we know, is to use the power of our influence in our relationship. So that means that we got to keep a strong, loving relationship with our kids so that when we give them advice and we give them our opinions, that they're open and accepting to that opinion, and that they want to make right, make good, and not lower their opinion of us. So that means we got to do everything in the whole discipline realm. And this applies to alcohol, but it also applies to studying, and how they manage their homework, and how they manage their choice of friends, and every other element that comes up as it comes to parenting. So hey, thank you, Fernando. I see people are here. I'm wearing my contacts tonight because I didn't like the shadow on my glasses the last time, but it also means I've got a little bit of compromise in my vision. So if I'm like zooming in like this, bear with me. But I see that Melanie's here. Hi, I'll get to questions. Keep posting. I'll get caught up in just a minute. I think I want to give some really pragmatic tips so you've got some really solid ideas around this particular thing. And I think, like any difficult conversation that you have with your kids, and whether that is, again, whether we're talking about underage drinking, whether we're talking about drugs, whether we're talking about beginning sexual relationships, or any topic that you might find difficult, religion, politics. I mean, there's many topics that are rich and deep and can be potentially contentious with our kids. I think the important thing for us to realize is that we're never going to have one conversation, that these are opportunities to hear what our kids have to say, on top of us sharing our thoughts about the matter. That even though we say you need to talk to your kids, we talk about this is the talk about alcohol, really it should be called the listening. It should be called the listening about hot topics, because it's when we can bring a topic to the conversation and engage in understanding what our kids' perspectives are. You might find it very easy to say things like, if you say to your kids, are you drinking, or are you sexually active, or whatever, if you ask them a hot topic, very likely that they're going to be more on the defensive. Whereas if you say, are people your age, or have you heard of any stories, or do you know anyone else who has, they're more likely to share stories about their general age cohort, or tell a story about somebody else that was in trouble, or talk about maybe something that made the news. If something came up that was newsworthy, that becomes the jumping off point. So now your kids are listening to you and you're sharing your perspective, and so it's very non-threatening. Because while you're talking about your attitudes and your opinions, it's not being directed at them like a lecture. You're not moralizing them. You're not saying what you want them to do. And what they're seeing is that you're a safe person to talk about. They're starting to see that you're willing to listen, and that you've got a humane perspective on things. But I think when it comes to particularly around drugs and alcohol, we really need to be speaking to them about the idea that it's still against the law, and that there's a reason why those laws exist, and that there's a value. It's a value to you that we're law-abiding citizens, and that we don't pick and choose which laws we're going to uphold and not uphold. So I think, especially when you've got kids that are going off to university, because I've seen families that have gotten into trouble because the kids did not know the policy of the campus. I think it's every parent's responsibility to go through the university or the college's guidelines, because it may be that they think they're not allowed to drink in residence, but then they go to a house party and they're walking across campus and they get stopped by security, and because they're intoxicated, they end up with a warning, or having to miss school, make up time. So you don't want ignorance to be part of that. And I think one of the other models that I really like, and I think it helps really set the stage for parents, is if you want to tell your kids that most campuses, again, look this up, read this information together. If you get into a situation where you're intoxicated and you've got a friend who's intoxicated, do your children know the signs of alcohol poisoning? Because there's a difference between saying, hey buddy, you need to sleep it off, and I need to call 911. And do your kids know the difference between those two things? Because what we really want is kids to stay alive and be safe. And so most campuses have a policy where if it looks like there is danger at hand, you can go to the dean or you can call 911, and you the drunk friend who's getting help, does not get reprimanded because you've done the responsible thing by reaching out and getting help. Do you see how the logic of that plays out to kids' minds? They understand it. We would rather have you get help, even if you yourself are drinking underage, because you're doing the better, right, good thing. So that's the same you can say to your kids. Look, you're a minor. You do not have my permission to drink. It's a family value that you wait until you're of age to drink. Let me help you learn ways to say no and save face. But if you get into a bad situation, just like the Dawn on campus, what's more important to me, the most important thing to me, is that you are alive and safe and that you're making good choices. And if that means calling a cab, taking away someone's car keys, saying, I got to have a ride, calling an ambulance, whatever it might be, do that right move, and you will maintain my respect, because that's the wise thing to do. And we'll talk about how the situation unfolded later. I think it's important too. The kids get these media message. They think everybody's drinking. They think that they must, because, you know, if everyone's doing it, then I got to do what everybody else is doing. And the truth of the matter is, statistically speaking, in Canada now, with all the campaigns that we've done through private industry, parent talk, libraries, high schools, education, the majority of minors are not drinking. We've actually made an improvement. So it's just what they're seeing in movies and television and magazines that are kind of glamorizing it, but it's not the truth. So they need to keep their eyes open. Look at all the people at the party that actually aren't drinking. Look at all the social clubs that they can go to where that's not going to put peer pressure on them, because it's not part of that social group's culture. So whether that's finding special interest groups in a high school, special interest groups at the campus, help your kids find that group of people so that they don't even have to have that peer pressure, so that they see that. And I think the other thing is, oh, hey, Heather. I think the other thing for people to know is that a lot of times why kids are drinking, besides the peer acceptance, and certainly when they go off to university, is because they're learning poor coping mechanisms to handle stress and handle isolation. So instead of looking at how they're kind of self-medicating, I think we have to go to the root of the problem. Is how are they handling stress? How are they handling being away from home? Make sure they know that every campus has student counseling facilities if they need to talk about the transition to going, being off at university. Keep in touch with them. I don't want you to helicopter your kids when they're away from you, but the truth is, a little text saying, love you, thinking of you, here for you, that makes them feel like even though they're away, that they still have this foundation of family around them. And it's very, very psychologically comforting. So, hey, I'm always a phone call away. Don't get blue. Don't get down. Talk. It's better to talk, good old talk therapy. Talk to friends, talk to me, talk to a counselor, talk to a best friend. Do you need a visit? Do you need money to fly home? Stay in touch so that they've got that root. And that's the part of parenting, as I say, like there's a lot of subtle stuff to parenting that makes a huge amount of difference. And that's one of them. So make sure that they've got those strategies in place. And like I said, it's very, nobody needs to know what you're drinking. Who's looking in your cup? How do they know whether you can have non-alcoholic beer and it's still served in a can, looks exactly like a non-alcoholic beer. No one's looking. You can buy them at the grocery store. No one's going to be picking up the label and looking. Everyone thinks you're the center of the world, but you're not the center of the world. No one's even going to notice. People drink sippy cups now because there's a lot of people that put drugs and think spiked drinks. And so now a lot of people are controlling their drinks. So how do they know what you have in there, whether that's a rum and Coke or just a Coke? It's not like you're embarrassing yourself. So help your kids develop some of these strategies. I've had parents of high school students that say, I'm going to FaceTime my kids at 11 o'clock to make sure that everything's fine at the party. And that might seem a bit intrusive, but what it often does for certain kids is they'll say, please do, because then I can say to my friends, I can't, my mom's going to FaceTime me. And I'm like so willing to be the bad guy if I am their excuse for not drinking and that helps them save face. I'm happy to play that role. But the point is, you talk about it in advance. What would be helpful? How can I help you say no? So that it's something that you can do naturally and comfortably. And whether you're saying, I can't, I'm on medication, I can't, I gotta try out tomorrow and I gotta be peak performance, I'm being scouted for some team, whatever it might be. Those are all strategies, but you can't expect a kid to think about them in the moment. They're not going to be brilliant in the moment. These are things that you want to say, what's going to feel real, natural, and authentic for you. So I think those are some really pragmatic, real world kind of ideas, but I'm interested in what's going on for you guys. What are your burning issues? What kind of stuff are your kids bringing home? How early are you seeing this? I found with my own kids who are now in university, but where I had my first real run-in with alcohol was actually not in high school. To tell you the truth, it was back when my kids were in middle school. It was like, when the non-thinking grade 7 and grade 8 steal a bottle of vodka and drink so much that they pass out in a ditch, and they're like, well, I have to be home for supper, and it's like, no, you don't. You need to help a friend who's in a ditch, but their parents have never talked to them about any of the consequences. They don't even know how much alcohol is in a bottle of alcohol. And so it often happens before you even know it. So this is what I mean. You can talk about this stuff all the time. It's an ongoing conversation. Talking about behaviors does not make behaviors happen. We know this from sex education. You educate kids about sex they don't go off and start sleeping around. That actually reduces STIs. It actually reduces the onset of sexual activity. So don't be afraid of information. All right. So now I'm here with Catherine Howell and her son Dylan, who's been helping me with the tech side of things. And they're going to be my eyes and help me filter through some of your questions here. So Catherine, I can see that there's questions coming in, but my eyes can't read them. So help me out. Shout out some questions.
So our first one from Heather is,
from Heather?
My 13-year-old friends are vaping. I had to Google what it was, but he knew enough to walk away and come talk to me.
Yeah, excellent. And vaping is everywhere. And the thing about vaping is, this started as being a way of nicotine removal, suspension, alternatives to smoking, and it has quickly morphed into its own form of addiction. It's got all other kinds of byproducts, and now, of course, we've got a lot of kids that are putting dope in there. So you think how do you know if they're in the smoking area at school and whether they're actually smoking marijuana or whether or not they're smoking nicotine. And of course, all that's going to change as the laws keep changing around that too. But regardless, I still go back to the idea of education, education, education. So the first thing I would say to your kid is, thank you so much for coming to me. Do you know what that means to me, that you would trust me to bring that topic? And I'm so glad that we have the kind of relationship that you would to come to me with that. Because if you don't open with that, the first thing that's going to come out of your mouth, they're going to be like, oh, maybe she doesn't want to hear bad news. Maybe she doesn't want to hear bad information, and a lot of us parents are kind of freaked out that our kids are in this stuff. So the very first thing is be open, honest, thank them. Thank them for the trust for coming with you. And if you don't know anything about what they're talking about, say, I don't know about what you're talking about. We don't have to be brilliant at everything. We always said we have to be so brilliant. You can either say, I want to talk about this later because I don't really know what I'm going to say. I need to get my thoughts together. Can we have a date to talk later, like tomorrow night or something? You can hit the pause button. You can make a date to talk and then talk to other people and do a little bit of research. Or you can also say, this is a whole new world. I got no idea. Well, let's go find out about it together. And I actually just posted, and I'm trying to think of where I posted. I'm going to have to put up a link after. I will put up a link after the talk embedded on a great article that was sent to me by a nurse that had done a lot of research on vaping. And I just can't remember if I put it on my Facebook or my YouTube. I can't remember where I put it, but I'll make sure that it's attached to this. So the idea is you go through the research together. And again, it's an opportunity to say, did you know? Isn't that interesting? Look at the data. Look at the chemicals. Look at the whatever. What do you think about that? And again, the more you end in a question mark and get them to hear what they're thinking about, the better. They kind of don't care what you know. They want to hear, they want to process their own thinking up against yours. So again, it's not to say that you have to sit there mute. It's just a matter of saying like, interesting. So say more about that. So I wonder why that's a cool thing. Like, why is status so important at this age? Have you ever noticed, what is it about the status thing with this group of kids? Why don't people feel confident and they feel they need something else? Why do people need a crutch? Just keep asking curious questions. And of course you can jump in with some of your thoughts as well, but you want the bulk of it to be getting your child to externalize their thinking, getting that thinking out on the outside. Yeah, thank you. Great question.
Okay, Rebecca sent us a message saying that her son just started his first year in high school.
Rebecca, high school.
Noticed on his group chat, she takes a peek at, that some of the kids were talking about lunchtime and sneaking a couple of beers out of the fridge of their parents' house.
Yeah.
Does she confront him? Does she let him know she's looking at the phone? What's the best way to handle it?
Okay, so she stumbled into information. This is like reading a kid's diary and finding out something, right? This really comes down to how we get our information and the importance of that. So I believe that if your relationship with your child in terms of the agreements that you made, and I like the word, agreements are different than rules. Nobody likes to have rules. Just the same way that a wife does not want her partner to impose a curfew on her when you go out for dinner with friends. Like, people don't like rules imposed on them. However, people are fine about mutual respect and things that make logic. And so if you say, listen, my job is to make sure that you are digitally socialized civilian of this world, and that you are being respectful and applying proper privacy and respect policies online, then in order for you to participate in groups and Facebook and everything else at this age, then I need to be able to do spot checks to make sure you're okay. And that is my job, not as somebody who is being nosy, but that's my job as a parent to make sure that you are safe. So if you're okay with that condition of me meeting my criteria of keeping you safe, then I will keep my nose out of the stuff that doesn't make right? So I would not be going on there and saying like, oh, you used a swear word. It's like, well, they're in high school. I think they know swear words. So long as they're not attacking somebody, that's different. So I think you choose your battles. But if you've made it that you're going to do spot checks or whatever, and that's part of your agreement, then you can say, hey, you know what? Did my little check-in, found some information that I didn't like. I want to talk about this beer at lunch thing that's going on. You know my family values. You know that that's illegal. And I'm just concerned that if you've got other friends that are doing that, that's kind of in your social group now. And I just want to know, do you remember that that's not okay by our family rules? And are you okay? Are you feeling strong enough that you can say no yourself? And again, it doesn't mean that you say, I'm taking away your computer. I don't like what I'm reading online, because your kids, they're going to go hyper, they're going to be covert. You do not want to train kids to be more tricky. The more autocratic your parenting is, the more you come down with an iron fist, you end up creating, I think this is Wes Wingett's terms, the sneak, the cheat, or the rebel. And all three of those are not what you want. You want a cooperative child who comes to you. So don't make them go underground or get more sneaky because you're in their face about things. It's an opportunity to discuss what's going on for them. So restate your family values, ask if they have a plan in place for being able to say no, and then trust them. Say, you know what? Yeah, you know, I'll trust you. I trust you'll make good decisions for yourself. And kids want that trust. You say, how do you make a kid that's trustworthy? Give them trust and tell them that you trust them. That for my kids was so important. They love knowing that we felt they could manage life. So give them that opportunity to make good for you. They will not want to disappoint you. And even, like I said, even if they make a mistake, and they're going to make mistakes, okay, it's part of growing up. When they make mistakes, their own personal regret and remorse will be enough, because they won't like the feeling of having gone astray from that. But that only comes if they look to you as somebody whose respect they want. And that comes from you having a good relationship with them. And having a good relationship means being non-punitive, because that's going to make them resent you. So that's why we have to keep talking about this, because it doesn't mean giving up discipline. It just means changing your discipline. And it certainly means changing your discipline as you move through the developmental phases. And young kids are happy to have you as an educator. But by the time you hit the middle ages and adolescent years, you've got to switch that up. You know, you've got to be more of a facilitator, help them use their brain, help them process why we do make choices about the things that we do. That can be a hard switch for parents, because we like to teach. Great question.
Okay, we've got a question from Melanie.
Melanie, hi.
Her son, who is in grade 2, is having anxiety in different situations, specifically at school. He seems to have a meltdown anytime there is a spirit day or something different. He can't decide what to wear and stresses out, often protesting about going to school.
Yeah, anxiety is really a very common issue. The incident rate is about 20% of the population. So he is for sure not alone. But I do believe that if it's really super debilitating, there are programs specifically designed for kids. CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, is sort of like the golden application. And there's all kinds of programs you can get kids enrolled into privately and sometimes through the schools. But I really believe that for most kids in the general anxiety, it's really more for me about training the parent to be the therapeutic intervention themselves. So it's more about you learning how you can be the kind of lay therapist to your child and help them. And I think one of the best websites for that is the bcanxiety.com. The BC, I'm doing that from memory, but if you Google BC Anxiety, you will get their website. And again, I can pop it up after our conversation. And they've got a tab for parents, and they do it by age, and they've got activities for kids, and they've got activities for parents and information. And so the minute you've got a kid with an anxiety issue, you have to become an expert in anxiety, whether you like it or not. And I just think it's a really fantastic resource. And so from the Adlerian roots that I come from, we look at, what's the usefulness of behavior? What's the purposefulness of behavior? And where are these feelings of inferiority coming from? These sort of what we say perceived felt minus, that I'm, what's the big worry? And when you say, like, if it's anything that isn't usual means I'm in a new circumstance. And if I'm in a new circumstance, how do I know I'm going to be socially successful in my new circumstance? And that really kind of goes to a piece of self-concept that says, I'm not really sure that I'm okay in all situations. I need more rules, more structure, more things to measure that I'm okay. So we got to keep filling up that child's bucket so that they feel like right now, as I am, I'm everything I need to be. And that's what the art of encouragement is. It really comes down to that child being able to have the courage to be imperfect, to say, it's Spirit Day and I wore the wrong thing, but uh-oh, I survived, I'm okay, I'm still me, mistakes happen. So not only do you need to learn some of the cognitive behavioral pieces, I really think Adler brings a great piece when he talks about how to be encouraging as in all our relationships, not just when our kids are anxious. If you've ever been in an encouraging relationship with a boss, a peer, a partner, like who are you your best self when you're with them, that you just feel that complete willing to be vulnerable because you can do no wrong, because they just love you so unconditionally, and they're a cheerleader in a way that motivates you to just be. It's a real state that if you haven't experienced, and some people haven't, but once you experience it once, you say, oh, it's like medicine to my soul, you know? And that's who we need to be for our kids. It's how we need to be for our friends and for our partners in life. And I hope I'm that for you folks. I hope that I model encouragement to you, because we're not perfect and I'm not perfect. And I think the worst thing you could ever be as a parent is perfect, because what kind of God idol, what kid is ever going to replace that when they grow up and become a parent? That's a whole other crazy making. So, I feel your struggle now, but I would just say, you can do this thing. Go get yourself fully resourced. Work with the teachers, because they can help with those, helping with those transition times too. And it's just more than I can kind of get into here in this format or whatever. But man, there's great online resources, and that's really where you start. So great question.
Okay, we've got Katie. My question is about my high energy middle child. How can I help them at school with things like circle time and activity tables and listening to teachers when I'm not there? It's hard to help enforce rules when you're not present.
Yes. Okay. So great question. And say, how old is Katie's son? Does he say?
Middle child. Don't have an age.
Middle child. Okay. So you asked the great question, which is, you're getting a report, I guess, of these things that are happening in the classroom, and probably it's the teacher reporting to you at the door. Now, a lot of teachers, and God bless, I work with teachers, I train teachers and whatever, but they only get the training that they get through Teachers College. And I'll tell you something, they almost get no training, almost zero training on behavior management, except for potentially a sticker chart, which I don't agree with anyways. But they really are not, it's like giving them a job and not giving them the tools. So I have tremendous empathy for teachers. They don't know what to do. They don't. So it's very common for them to just talk at the door, and they feel they have to report to the parent, we didn't have a very good day today. No, he was up and down at carpet time. We had to put him in a timeout. Could you talk to him? Could you do something on your shift? And if you don't know about psychology, you could see where you would think that might make sense. Like, you're the parents, you should talk to him, discipline him at home. But that's not going to help. I'm telling you, it's not going to help. Because when we look at behavior happens in the social field in which it occurs. That's so you could have a child who is completely has impulse control at home and is completely lovely and cooperative at home, and then they go to the classroom where they don't have friends, they think the teacher doesn't like them, they have no social status, and they completely creatively try to solve that problem by acting out, hijacking attention, being a class clown, being a bully, whatever it might be. And you see none of that at home. And it can be vice versa too. It can go either way. So the only person who can influence a child's behavior is the group that they're in, and that includes the teacher, but not only the teacher. You can use the power of the group to help that child find his place and say, why is he important and why do we need his cooperation? And get him to understand that when he gets up and down, he's disturbing other people. And wouldn't he like to help the group? And he'll want to help the group if he cares about the group, and he'll care about the group if he finds his place in it. And so kids do that through their friendships. They do it through what we call the P's and C's, participation and contribution. What can he do in class so that he can have an important role to help that class function? Can he feed the pets? Can he be the line leader? Can he hand out snack? Can he be the person who teaches a soccer lesson because he happens to be really great at soccer and he could step up and co-teach the class? It can be any of a million different things. Even Jim Carrey, who was the class clown, was allowed to entertain the class once they got through their lessons, and that was his contribution, so long as it wasn't disturbing. So I really think as a parent outside the classroom, there's no sense, if you got in trouble at school, you don't need him to get in trouble at home. You need to be the warm arms that he comes home to after a tough day at school and say, I'm sorry things are hard for you. It sounds like it was a bad day. Here's a hug. we'll go about this tomorrow, but the teacher needs to be the change agent. And so you can strategize with her. So what do you do when a child gets up from carpet? What do you do from a child who's not listening? And you can say, well, here's what I do at home. Can I toss some ideas out? But a lot of it really is about reading my blog. There's a great book called Maintaining Sanity in the Classroom, which is all the classroom applications of what I talk about for parents that are specific to classrooms. And so if the teacher's willing and open to your suggestions, and you take it as a problem that you want to solve together, because you don't want your son to have a bad school year. Your teacher doesn't want to spend time disciplining your kid. Just say, hey, I've got some information, might be helpful, might be useful. Would you be willing that we could get together maybe once every 2 weeks and see if we can build some strategies around some of these things that are happening? But it's really, in fact, her job in the classroom. And I've given you a couple ideas there with the P's and C's and the building up the friendship. So hope that's a little bit of help anyways.
Okay, Alexandra would like to know, what is the best approach for dealing with a rude and defiant behavior from my 8-year-old son? A recent development, total refusal to do completely normal things that he used to do, like fork at dinner or carrying his backpack.
Oh, so it sounds like it is game on, wartime. When it crosses multiple things, what it tells me is that this is in the relationship. It sounds to me like you are entrenched in a power struggle, power contest, and you may be into some revenge behaviors from him as well. So he's basically stating to you, you can't make me. I will not be told what to do. I will be the boss of me, or I certainly won't let somebody else boss me. I decide for me. And in a sense, he's winning, because what are you going to do? How are you going to make him pick up a fork? How are you going to make him carry his backpack? Like, kids will find the thing that they can defeat you on. So what you'll find in a power contest is it's a little bit like a teeter-totter, where one person is in the role of being the tyrant and the other person is the slave. And when we teach people this way of being in human relationships, whether it's parent, child, husband, wife, employee, boss, what happens is nobody will tolerate being in a slave position, which is good. You don't want your kid kicked around in life by you or anybody else. So when they feel that they are in a one-down position, the natural human inclination then is to say, I'm not going to stay oppressed, and therefore I'm going to exert myself. And all we really end up doing in that situation is we flip the teeter-totter, and now the child is in the position of being the tyrant, and they are now exerting their power over you. So my very short answer is, I need both of you to take a new model of being in a relationship together. And this is not something that's going to happen tonight. I'm saying this is why you want to learn about Adlerian psychology, because what it teaches you to do is to move away from slave-tyrant relationships and move towards how to be in cooperative, socially equal relationships. And that doesn't mean that you are in a child-friendly, exalted child, self-indulgent, child-centered relationship. It means you have rights and he has rights. It's how you win their cooperation. So you can't make him carry his backpack. You got to make him want to carry his backpack. And that takes a whole bunch of steps and a whole bunch of changes in the entire dynamic in the relationship. So I've got Honey, I Wrecked the Kids is a book that goes into more of those details. If you've already got a sense that that's going on and you just want fast track to some tips on different situations, my other book, which is Ain't Misbehavin', is basically like look up won't carry knapsack, look up won't use cutlery, and it will go through some scripts to say, 5 or 6 different tools, and just see what resonates and what starts to win some cooperation. And once you get that power out of the relationship and you get the respect happening again through some change in your discipline techniques and kind of warming up the relationship, he's going to start wanting to be more cooperative with you, because that's what we're actually wired to do when we're not feeling resentment. So again, it's always hard. I want to give you a little bit of information to get you moving forward without being disrespectful for how complex some of these problems and issues are. So anyways, a little bit of a starting point for you anyways. Certainly with the knapsack, I would make sure there's lots of choice. I can't make you carry it, but I'm happy to wait. You can carry it on your head, you can carry it on your back, you can carry it on your chest. We can leave now, we can leave in 5 minutes. Anytime you add choice, in a sense, you're handing some empowerment over to a child. And for young kids, sometimes that's enough. They just good. I just want to decide for me. So anyways, we're kind of at the end of our time here, folks. There's still a few. Okay, hold on. I'll hang around. I can see the screen is filling. So if you guys are good to hang in, I'm good to hang in. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Hi, Allison. This is from Julia. How do you deal with an 18-year-old who is really bad at money but is now living at college and has to do his own grocery shopping?
Oh, yes. Okay. So bad with money. It would be great to say that we got everything done in time but for the time they launch, but sometimes we're playing catch up. And so, all right, so we're starting here. They're off at college. They're not doing good with money. What I would suggest is you don't want to be rescuing them, which means when they come short on their money and they're calling you for money, and of course they have a legitimate reason because they're saying it's groceries. What mother in their right mind would say no to their kid having food? So I think what you want to do instead is to create a budget, and the way that whatever your budget is for what you allocate, I would try giving them the money in those buckets. And one way that you can do that is with those money on card systems. So if you have said that I'm willing to buy this much in groceries, don't just e-transfer $200 to their bank account. They're going to spend that $200 on Roots bags or beer. Instead, give them the $200 certificate to Loblaws or Metro or whatever. If you've said you've given so much for transportation, then get them an Esso gas card. Don't just give them cash. That forces them to stay within their buckets. So I think asking them to track their accounts. And the thing is too, now kids are so good now with apps. You can now, almost every bank, there's Mint, there's all kinds of apps that actually, once you get it set up, when you use your Interac card, it tracks, it knows, it automatically remembers that this is a Metro, so this must be for groceries, and this is Shoppers Drug Mart, so this must be for health and hygiene. And they can start to see their spending habits. So rather than being too punitive with them, just say, hey, we got to get up to speed. Are you really tracking where you're spending your money? Have you looked at what you're allocating? Have you looked at what you could do in order to bring that back into line? And help them learn some of those skills. So when they realize that ordering in a pizza costs $25, but if they actually got a frozen pizza from McCain's and kept it in the freezer, that it's only going to cost them $4.99 when they're on sale, they might go, wow, that's extra money that I could use for something else that's a lot more important. But, so think of it again as giving them feedback, teaching them skills, and not rescuing them. Let them feel that tension. So yeah, sorry, you don't have money to come home this weekend. You're out of your budget. Yeah, I'm really sorry. Oh, you're out of gas now. Oh, you got to walk now. Oh, maybe someone's got a bike you can borrow. They've got to feel some of that necessary tension and some of those consequences. And if we keep jumping in, they're not going to learn those lessons as fast. Yeah. So good luck with that.
Okay, Andrea wants to know, so what should be done when the rules have been broken without being punitive, especially when dealing with teens and all the new issues they're going through?
When the rules have been broken and you don't want to be punitive, it's an excellent question. So what we do is I like talking to kids at family meetings. You can have one, I'm not saying that you can't have little sidebar conversations with your kids. Not everything is for the whole family to discuss, but the idea is once a week, you sit down, you have a family meeting, and you talk about how the house is going to be operated like any other democracy. So it's like having a town meeting, like you lived in a village and you don't like the taxes, or you think the road needs to have speed bumps because kids have to walk to school and the cars are going too fast. This is where you do your problem solving in the family and you co-create the agreements that you're going to live by. So you co-create the rules with your kids. First of all, you need to have their input. It's got to be something that's really fair and reasonable and they've got some buy-in. So that's number one. So get those rules established. And then you're saying, so what happens when they break the rules? Instead of punishment, we use consequences. That every child has an opportunity to make choices in life, but every choice has a consequence that comes with it. And rather than you being the parent when you've got kids of this age, rather than you sitting there trying to figure out what makes a good consequence, you can also ask the child to say, what would make a good consequence for this? Help me create a consequence that would make sense to fit the situation. So consequences have to have a few elements in order to ensure that they're not punitive. So they need to be respectful. They need to be related. That's why it's called a logical consequence. So if you say, curfew is midnight, if you're not home at midnight, I'm taking away your computer. Well, that's not related at all. One has to do with computer time and the other one has to do with knowing that you're safe and that you're under my roof so that I can have a good night's sleep. They're not related, so that would make it punitive. And certainly with technology, that's what parents do all the time. If you're lippy, I'm taking away your computer. If your marks fall below 70%, I'm taking away your computer. Kids hate that. They will revenge against you if you take away their technology. The only reason to take away technology is if they're misusing it. So it has to be related, and it needs to be revealed in advance, meaning you have to agree. So if you've got a kid who's late with curfew, you can say, so what should happen if our curfew is 12 and you're not home at 12? What would make sense? And get them to figure out what's related, what's logical, what would be a logical thing. Let them use their big brain. And so usually if the child comes up with the consequence and it meets that criteria, you almost never have to apply it because they know. And if you do have to apply the consequence, they're not going to be angry at you because they went through the process of setting it up. It didn't surprise them. They already knew that it was respectful and it's in the way that you oriented it. So you're not going to get the retaliatory. It doesn't mean they won't be bummed, but I don't want a kid saying, hey, if I do, if I don't get my laundry done on time, then I'll give you $10. Money is not about getting clothes in the laundry basket. It doesn't make any sense. You're barking up the wrong tree. So get them to use their noodle on what would make a good consequence, and that's really that's a big piece of being non-punitive. Now, having said that, here's what you're quickly going to find. When you start entering into these discussions, you're going to find a lot of times it's really not about consequences. What you're really going to find is to say, well, why don't I just do my own laundry? And you're going to realize that's not even a consequence. That's just a good solution. And the minute you can get out of that whole, I'm a parent and I must discipline my child mindset and just say, hey, we have a problem in the way the family's functioning and we need a better solution. That's so opening. It invites creativity. And you're going to come up with all kinds of things that you might not ever have thought of that says, well, what do I care? So long as the problem's gone, it's all great. So think about it, about our family has a problem, it needs a solution, not you're a kid who's acting badly who needs to be disciplined, and you will set an entire new landscape on how you deal with issues in the family. It's a huge, huge change right there. Just a reframe from the parent's point of view.
Couple quick more.
Okay, good. Catherine's got those good questions. We can't go away yet.
Laura is saying that her daughter, who just started grade 1 at a new school because they just moved, in the bath told a couple of white lies, just small fibs, but when she calls her on it, she says she's joking.
Ha ha ha, kids and lying. Okay, so the thing you need to know about lying is that every child will experiment with lying. It's actually a sign of intellect and maturation, frankly. The smarter the kid, the sooner they lie. The thing is, when they lie, it gets a reaction and a response, and there's as I say, we always talk, what's the usefulness of the behavior? What's the purpose of the behavior? And with lying, it can have a bunch of different reasons. So you got to think about what it might have been for her. Why was she telling the white lie? So sometimes kids lie because they don't want to get in trouble. I didn't break the lamp. Because if I tell you that I broke the lamp, then you're going to yell at me. So why would I want to get yelled at? So instead, I'm going to try lying. So it can be to avoid punishment. Some kids will white lie because they want to impress their friends. I've had all kinds of kids tell me that their mom's having a baby, and I meet the mom at the door. I'm like, hey, I just heard you're having a baby. And they're like, I'm not having a baby. And it's like, uh-oh. Because the kid heard somebody else at carpet time say their mother was having a baby, and everybody said, ooh, that's so cool. And they're like, oh, I'm going to get on that gravy train. If everyone thought that was cool, I want to be impressed too. So sometimes they can lie for social status or to impress. So there's different reasons why people lie. It can be an easy, lazy workabout to avoid the hard work of living, and so in each situation there's a different usefulness. But I think it's really important that you call the child out on the usefulness, because it can be pre-conscious. They don't know why they're doing what they do. That's why we don't say, why did you lie? Never say why. Kids don't know why. So however, if you make a guess, if you say, can I hazard a guess, could it be that you told your friend that we were going to Florida to Disneyland because you thought that if you had a really impressive family holiday that she might like you more, she might think you're more important, or we're a bigger family, a more exciting family than we are. And then you just look for that recognition reflex. Like, you can kind of tell there's a little twinge that happens in their eyes. And that's it, moving from the pre-conscious to the conscious mind. And once it's in the conscious mind, they're like, oh yeah, that's the first time it became part of their awareness that that's why they did it. And then you can challenge their faulty approach. Then you can say, do you really think that we have to be more than who we are to have friends? Aren't friends the kind of people who love you whether you can afford a trip to Disneyland or not, right? So then you can start working with that material. The other thing I think it's important to know about lying, and this comes from the research, telling kids why it's bad to lie, like the little boy who cried wolf, that doesn't seem to do as good of a job in changing behavior as telling kids the benefits of being truthful. So saying that truthfulness is a characteristic or a character trait of people that have a lot of respect, then that's something that we want them to be, a person of good moral character, and being truthful is part of that, which means anytime they tell you the truth, again, if they come and say, I didn't do well on my test, thank you for being truthful. That must have been hard news to share. I can always handle hearing the truth. We can handle any problem together. So put a lot of energy on when your kids are truthful, rather than making a big thing about why lying is bad. Not to say you can't say that lying is why it can get you into trouble, but emphasize more how much you value their use of truthfulness. Yeah.
Heather is struggling with balancing her son's independence, trusting that he knows what is expected, and his ADHD and his inability to focus on tasks. Any tips?
So we could have a whole Facebook talk just on the diagnosis of attention deficit disorder. That's what I can tell you right there. Here's what I would just suggest as a starting point, regardless of how we agree on the diagnosis of ADHD. I would definitely say that if there's a checklist of characteristics, and I would say children meet the criteria for ADHD. Does that mean it's a disorder? That's a different conversation. But the point is, you got a kid who's not focusing, getting up and down, not staying on task. That I can deal with. Whatever you call that, we can deal with that. And how we deal with that is the same concept of kids who want to function in a group and not just be going off in 27 different tangents. They got to feel like the wheels that are part of the cogs of the machinery. Whether that is a team playing baseball that says you got to line up, when you hit the ball, you run to first base, and this is how we make a coordinated effort that makes a game, that makes it fun, that makes it successful. Or whether it's a classroom where you need to sit at circle time and pay attention because the teacher's reading a story. Or whether we're having family dinner and we're hearing about everybody's day and you need to sit in your chair and eat dinner and listen until it's your turn to talk. All of those things are social rules that involve asking the child to suppress their own personal interests in what they would like to be doing now. Me. I'm not interested. I don't care about your day. I want to talk about my day. I don't want to sit down. I'd rather go here. I'd rather go there. This is now interesting. Suppressing that to say, what do the needs of the situation call for? How can I let my fellow man talk even though I don't really care about their day, but I understand that it's more respectful to let them have a chance? That's called having social interest. Social interest is when you stop being egocentric and just making yourself the center of the universe and your impulses and what's in it for me and what do I care about doing right now, not what are the social rules and not what's happening in other people's worlds. It's expanding to see them as part of a group and seeing them part of functioning in a group. And so I want to increase the child's social interest. When you increase your social interest, you will decrease those disturbing, non-focused, impulsive type behaviors. They will come down with increased social interest. So how do we increase social interest? Get them caring and in servitude of their fellow man, and which is how human beings are wired. You know, get them making cookies to bring to their classroom. Get them to hand out snack at snack time. Anything they can do to help others. Be a friendly reader to a kid in kindergarten who is having reading problems. Walk a neighbor's dog because they're sick. Anything they can do to help others. Open a door. Anything they can do to help their fellow man. Now their focus is not on them, but it's them saying, wow, did that ever feel good? Help them process. Did you see how much your grandpa smiled when you brought him those cookies and you helped him with the door? You start having them process that so that they actually realize that when I thwart my own desires and I think more about my fellow man, I'm actually happier. I feel closer. I feel more connected. I'm not so lonely. I'm not so isolated. Life isn't so threatening. We're really meant to be in groups, and we have our highest psychological security when we're in groups, and that's how we get embedded. And so work on those helping others skills. Find your child's strength, their talents, their interests, and learn how to flip them towards helping their fellow man. And that can be an 18-month-old putting toilet paper in the little basket next to the toilet and calling that their job of the week. They can do that. Kids can do things for others, and then appreciating it and showing it how it has an impact and makes the group function better. So that's the focus for those kids, increasing social interest. All right, so I got to wrap up because otherwise my doorbell's going to go because I still actually have more things going on in my house tonight. I've got to turn my living room from a Facebook Live studio, into a coffee hour. So anyways, thanks everybody. I hope this has been helpful and useful. I am going to put up the resource links, and if I get a bit of time, I'm going to go through and read some questions, and I'll fire up some more answers as well. Never enough time. But I plan on doing these regularly, and so thank you very much. Welcome back to the school year, and stay in touch. We'll do this again soon. Ciao. Bye.